The silent thief in the night, Jack lived alone on a quiet farm. After the last alien war, he wanted peace. His home was far from the city, surrounded by trees and open land. He grew his own food, tomatoes, carrots, and other vegetables. Life was simple. He didn't want much, just quiet days and quiet nights. But one morning, Jack saw something strange. His carrots were missing. Not a few. Half the row was gone. He checked the fence. No holes. No signs of animals. The next night, more vegetables disappeared. Jack became curious. He placed a small camera in his garden to find out what was happening. When he watched the video the next day, his heart skipped a beat. It wasn't a raccoon. It wasn't a human thief. It was a woman, tall, thin, and not from Earth. Her skin had a soft glow, like the moon. Her clothes were torn. She looked around, nervously, and grabbed what she could, then ran into the woods. Jack didn't feel angry. He felt surprised and a little worried. Why would an alien be stealing from his garden? Why didn't she ask for help? Why was she so afraid? That night, Jack stayed awake. He turned off all the lights and waited quietly near the garden. Hours passed. Then he saw her again. She moved slowly, checking the shadows. Her hands were shaking. She picked a tomato and hid it in a cloth. Jack stood up and spoke softly. "You don't have to steal, just ask." The woman froze, her eyes wide, body tense. She dropped the cloth and tried to run, but she stumbled and fell. Jack ran toward her but stopped a few steps away. He raised his hands to show he meant no harm. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said gently. The woman looked up. Her eyes were wet. Her lips trembled. She whispered something, barely loud enough to hear. "Please, don't hurt me. My children, they are hungry." Jack's heart broke. She wasn't a criminal. She was a mother. He helped her sit up. Her body was cold. She looked weak, like she hadn't eaten in days. Jack pointed toward his barn. "Come. It's warm inside." At first, she didn't move. Then slowly, she stood and followed him. Inside the barn, he gave her a blanket and a bottle of water. She drank it fast, like it was the first water she had tasted in days. Jack asked, "Are you alone?" She didn't answer. She only looked toward the woods with fear in her eyes. Jack didn't ask more. He just said, "You can rest here. You are safe." He didn't sleep that night. He sat outside the barn thinking. He had seen aliens before. He had fought against some in the war, but this one, she was not a soldier. She was someone running from something, or someone. In the early morning, Jack brought her some warm food. She ate slowly now, calmer than before. She looked at Jack with tired eyes and said, "Thank you. You are kind." He smiled a little. "What's your name?" She hesitated. "Elira." "Elira," he repeated. "I'm Jack." She nodded and pulled the blanket tighter around herself. Later that morning, Jack went to check on her, but she wasn't alone anymore. In the corner of the barn, two small figures hid behind an old barrel. Two children, alien children. Their skin was like Elira's, glowing softly in the sunlight. They were scared, eyes wide, bodies thin and shaking. Elira stood in front of them as if to protect them from Jack. Jack raised his hand gently. "It's okay. I'm not here to hurt you." One child peeked out from behind her. The other held her leg tightly. "They're your children?" Jack asked. Elira nodded slowly. "They haven't eaten in 2 days. I didn't know where else to go." Jack stepped back. He didn't want to scare them more. "You're safe here," he said. "All of you." Elira looked down. "You don't know what you're risking. If they find us." Jack frowned. "Who?" Elira shook her head. "Bad people. They take aliens. For money." I ran. That was the moment Jack understood. This wasn't just a hungry family. This was something bigger, something dangerous. But Jack didn't feel fear. He felt something else, responsibility. He looked at the woman and her 2 children, scared, tired, and alone in a world that wasn't theirs. and he made a silent promise. He would protect them, whatever it took. The children in the shed the next morning brought silence but not peace. Jack moved slowly, not wanting to startle anyone. He stepped into the barn and stopped when he saw them again. Two small alien children. They huddled close to their mother, their large eyes full of fear. The older one looked ready to run, while the younger clung to Elira's leg like a shadow. Jack placed a bowl of warm food near them and stepped back. He didn't say anything. He just waited. Elira took the bowl carefully. She broke the food into pieces and gave it to the children. They hesitated, sniffed it, then ate like they hadn't eaten in days. Jack noticed the way their thin fingers shook as they held the pieces. He wondered how long they had lived like this, hiding, running, starving. Elira looked up and whispered, "They were born in a cage." Jack's chest tightened. He didn't understand what that meant, but he didn't ask. He could see the pain in her face. She had lived through something dark, something worse than hunger. He sat on an old stool nearby and spoke softly. "You don't have to run anymore." Elira looked away. "You don't know what they'll do to us, to you." Jack stayed quiet. He wasn't afraid of strangers or threats. He had seen war. He had seen death. But these children, these tiny, glowing children, were something different. They didn't bring war. They brought sorrow. Later that day, Jack cleaned up an old shed behind his barn. It had a roof, a heater, and a soft mattress. It wasn't much, but it was safer than the open barn. He showed it to Elira, who looked at him with uncertain eyes. "It's for you and the kids," Jack said. "You'll be warmer here." She nodded slowly. The children followed her, still unsure about Jack. He didn't blame them. Trust takes time, especially when you've only ever seen cruelty. As the sun set, Jack brought them blankets and fresh water. He left food again, but this time, he saw the older child peek from behind the shed door and look at him with curiosity. Not fear. It was small, but it was something. That night, Jack lay in bed thinking about them. He remembered the war, the things he had to do, the friends he lost. He thought those days were over. But now, something new had entered his life. Something soft, fragile, important. The next morning, something strange happened. Jack walked out to check on them and found a tiny drawing on his doorstep. It was made with a stick and a piece of cardboard. The drawing showed a man giving food to 3 glowing figures. Under it was a symbol, maybe a thank you. Jack smiled. It was the older child's way of speaking. He knocked gently on the shed door. Elira opened it slowly. Jack handed her a basket full of fresh vegetables. "I planted too many," he said. With a smile, Elira smiled back just a little. "You're kind, but kindness is dangerous." Jack shrugged. "Sometimes it's worth the risk." She took the basket and whispered, "They don't talk. Not since we escaped, but they understand." Jack nodded. "Maybe one day they'll feel safe enough to speak again." He turned to leave, but then stopped. "Elira, who are they? The ones chasing you?" Her face changed. Her body stiffened. "They are not from Earth, but they work with humans, bad ones. They find lost aliens, sell them, hurt them. We escaped from one of their camps." Jack felt anger rise inside him, not just at the aliens, at the humans helping them. This was his world, and people were using it to hurt the innocent. That evening, Jack sat at his table and made a decision. He pulled out an old, dusty box from his closet. Inside were things he hoped he'd never need again: a shortwave radio, a set of maps, and a hidden ID from his time as a soldier. He had contacts, not many, but enough. He would find out who these hunters were, and he would stop them. Not just for Elira, not just for her children, but because it was right. Outside, the wind blew softly, and inside the small shed, a family slept for the first time without fear. But danger still waited, and Jack knew peace never lasts long. Her terrible story, Jack noticed it on the 3rd day. Elira no longer flinched when He approached. Her shoulders were less tense. Her voice, though quiet, didn't shake as much. The children no longer hid completely. They watched him from the shed doorway, silent, but no longer terrified. The fear hadn't vanished, but it had softened. Jack waited for the right moment, and that moment came one cold morning. He sat near the shed, handing Elira a cup of warm tea. They sat together in silence until she finally spoke. "You want to know what happened to us?" she said without looking at him. Jack nodded once. "If you want to tell me." Elira held the cup tightly. Her eyes were far away, remembering pain. "We weren't supposed to land here. Our ship was damaged during a storm in deep space. We crashed far from any city. My mate didn't survive. Only I and the children did." Jack listened, his jaw tight. "We tried to find help," Elira continued, "but what found us instead were hunters. Not all aliens. Some were humans, too, working together. They didn't care if we were hurt, scared, or weak. They only saw profit." Jack clenched his fists but didn't interrupt. "They locked us in cages," she said. "Not metal. Something worse. Cold energy walls. They couldn't be touched. I watched others scream from the pain of it. Every day someone disappeared, we never saw them again." She looked down at her children, now asleep in the corner. They were going to take them next. My son is still small, but the older one, they had plans. I couldn't let it happen. I waited for a storm. The power flickered. I forced the door open and ran. I didn't even grab shoes. Jack looked down at her bare feet, still healing. I hid in forests, ate roots, drank from puddles. I told the children to stay silent, always silent. Then I found your garden. I didn't mean to steal. But they were hungry, and I couldn't let them die." Her voice cracked, but she didn't cry. She had cried enough already. Jack finally spoke. "You did what any mother would do. You didn't steal. You survived." Elira looked at him, her eyes full of tired disbelief. "Why do you care? You're human." Jack's answer came slow but steady. "Because I've seen pain before, and I've caused it too. During the war, I followed orders I didn't believe in. I watched innocent people die. Now, maybe I can do something better." She stared at him, studying his face. Then she said, "You don't owe me anything." Jack replied, "Maybe not, but I owe the world something better than silence." The wind outside picked up. The leaves danced. But inside something had changed. Elira had told her truth, and Jack had listened, not with fear or judgment, but with care. That night, Jack took out his old radio and powered it up. He hadn't used it in years. He tuned the frequency until he found a secure line used long ago by Earth's old allies, those who fought against alien slavery and human trafficking. He sent out a short coded message: "Sheltering survivors. Request intel on off-world trade operations. Possible hunter presence near Sector 9DE. Respond, if still active." He wasn't sure anyone would answer, but he had to try. The next day, Elira stepped out of the shed for the first time. The morning sun hit her face, and Jack saw her strength. She wasn't just a mother in pain. She was a fighter who had chosen survival over surrender, and Jack knew. Then, this was no longer just about helping strangers. This was about doing what was right, and facing the evil that hid in the shadows. A visitor in the darket began with a shadow, one that did not belong to the trees. Jack had learned to watch the edges of his land. He checked the fence lines. He knew the sounds of the birds, the wind, the rustling of animals in the bushes. But that night something felt off. Even the air seemed to freeze. He stood on his porch with a flashlight in hand. Nothing moved. The stars above blinked silently, and the shed where Elira and her children slept was quiet. But Jack couldn't shake the feeling something or someone was out there. Then came the knock, not a loud bang, just 3 slow, careful knocks at the front door. Jack didn't open it right away. He stepped back and reached under a shelf where his old sidearm lay hidden in a box. He loaded it quickly and tucked it behind his back. Then he opened the door, Just a little. A figure stood there, tall, cloaked, and still. The man spoke in a voice too smooth, too cold. "Evening, I'm just passing through, looking for someone." Jack said nothing. The man smiled thinly. "Seen anything strange lately? Perhaps something not from around here?" Jack narrowed his eyes. "Just foxes stealing my chickens." The man gave a low chuckle. "Right, foxes. Well, if you do see something unusual, especially something glowing, female and not human, let us know." Before Jack could reply, the man stepped forward, too close. Because helping a fugitive alien family would be unwise. Jack's jaw tightened. "I don't know what you're talking about." The man didn't argue. He simply turned to leave but paused at the edge of the porch. "Warm night? Too warm for someone to hide in a shed, don't you think?" Jack didn't answer. The figure melted back into the darkness, disappearing into the trees as if he'd never been there. Jack closed the door, locked it, and turned off all the lights. Then he moved fast. He ran to the shed. Inside, Elira was already awake. She had felt it too. The danger in the air. "They found us," she whispered. Jack nodded. "We need to move. Tonight." Elira shook her head. "They won't stop now. They know I'm here. They'll burn this place if they have to." Jack looked at her children, still sleeping. He couldn't let harm come to them. He made a choice. "We hide you. Deep," he said. "They won't find you." He led them to his basement. It was an old shelter from the war, built strong, with steel walls and hidden entrances. No one had been down there in years. He cleared it out, laid blankets down, and handed Elira a flashlight. "You stay here," he said. No sound. No light unless needed. Elira looked at him. "And you?" Jack gave a small, tight smile. "I'll deal with our visitor." He returned upstairs. The radio crackled suddenly. A voice came through, quiet and rough. "This is Whisper 9. Message received. We know who's hunting you. They're not alone. Stay sharp. Help is coming." Jack whispered a thank you and turned the radio off. He felt a weight lift slightly. He wasn't alone anymore, but he also knew help would take time. The next night they came again, not just one. 3 figures this time. One walked the perimeter. One scanned the ground with a glowing device. The third stood still, watching the house. Jack turned off every light, every machine. He stood by the window, pistol in hand, heart steady. The hunters didn't knock this time. They searched. One walked toward the shed. Jack's hand tensed on the door handle, but then the hunter turned away. They were looking, but not sure. Jack had only one advantage left. They didn't know yet if she was truly here. The figures disappeared back into the woods. But Jack knew. They would return. They would not stop until they captured her. And if they couldn't, they would destroy everything in their path. A plan to escape. The silence after the hunters left was heavier than before. Jack stood by the window long after they were gone, staring into the dark trees. He knew it wasn't over. The way they moved, the way they scanned the land, it wasn't a warning. It was a message. "We're watching you." The next morning, Jack didn't waste time. He knew what had to be done. The hunters were careful, but they were not patient. Sooner or later they would return in numbers. He needed a plan, not just to hide Elira and her children, but to move them far from here. When he told Elira, she looked unsure. "Where would we go? They have ships. They can track us." Jack nodded. "I know. That's why we don't run far. We go underground." He showed her something he had never shown anyone. Behind his barn was an old hatch covered with wood and dirt. It led to a forgotten tunnel, a wartime escape route built by his grandfather. No one knew it was there. Not even the local maps showed it. Elira followed him into the tunnel, her children close behind. The air was damp and dusty, but the walls were strong. It led deep under the earth, then curved away toward an abandoned railway half a mile off his property. This tunnel was built to move soldiers unseen, Jack explained. Now, it'll protect you. For the next 3 days, Jack and Elira worked together. They carried food, blankets, and tools into the tunnel. They made a small living space, hidden and silent. Jack even added a battery-powered light system using old gear he kept in storage. Elira helped without complaint. She worked with quiet focus, her face set with determination. Jack could see now, she wasn't just a mother. She was a survivor. Strong, clever, and fierce when it came to protecting her children. The children began to change too. The younger one laughed softly when Jack handed him a small toy he had carved. The older one finally spoke. A single word. Safe. It nearly brought tears to Jack's eyes. Still, time was short. The hunters had returned once more during the night. Jack saw their tracks near the far end of his fence. They were searching harder now. They weren't guessing anymore. They knew. Jack sat Elira down and said, "I sent out a message days ago. Someone heard it. They're coming, but it may take time." Elira looked at him. "You're risking your life." Jack gave a half smile. "It's not the first time." She hesitated, then said, "I thought humans didn't care about us. Most just look away." Jack replied, "Most do, but not all. And someone has to care first. Maybe that's me." They worked through the night. Jack taught Elira how to operate the tunnel hatch, how to hide it if he wasn't there. He gave her an old communicator, showed her the emergency codes. Then he handed her a small blaster, one he had taken from a fallen enemy years ago. Elira stared at it. "I don't want to fight," Jack said quietly. "Then fight to protect, that's different." She nodded slowly and took the weapon. The plan was almost ready. But time was running out. Jack received another message through his radio that evening. "Whisper 9, extraction planned, rendezvous in 4 days, hold position, warning, confirmed bounty on your location, use extreme caution." A bounty. That meant the hunters were now being paid. Not just for Elira, but for Jack too. Jack didn't tell her that part. He simply said, 4 more days, then we move. Elira's eyes filled with something new. Hope. But deep in Jack's gut, he knew. Hope alone wouldn't be enough, because the storm was coming, and it would hit before 4 days were up. The hunters' strike. The storm did not wait 4 days. It came on the 2nd. It was just past midnight when Jack heard it. An engine, low and steady, not from any Earth vehicle. He grabbed his flashlight and his weapon and stepped out into the eye. Dark. But it wasn't dark for long. A flash of bright red light lit the trees behind his house. They had come. This time, the hunters didn't hide. 3 large figures moved through the trees with scanning equipment. One of them pointed toward the barn. Another headed toward the shed. They weren't guessing anymore. They knew exactly where to look. Jack ran. He moved fast across the yard and slammed a switch inside the barn. It was old, rusted, but it worked. A flare shot high into the sky, green and silent. A signal, a warning to Whisper 9. "We've been found." Back at the tunnel, Elira was already awake. She had felt it too. The ground trembled from their steps. Her children huddled close, eyes wide. Jack rushed to them and whispered quickly, "Don't make a sound. Lock the hatch. Stay hidden. I'll lead them away." Elira grabbed his arm. "You'll die." Jack met her eyes. "Not tonight." He ran toward the hunters, not away. From behind trees, he fired 2 quick shots. One hunter fell, stunned but not dead. Another shouted something in a strange tongue. They gave chase, thinking Jack was trying to escape. But Jack wasn't running for safety. He was leading them away from the tunnel. He ducked behind a tree and activated an old war trap, buried years ago just in case. The ground exploded, throwing dust and sparks into the air. The closest hunter screamed, blinded by the flash. Jack rolled, aimed, and fired again. 2 down, 1 left, but it wasn't over. From the smoke, the final hunter appeared. Bigger than the others, stronger. His helmet had red eyes and a jagged scar across the front. This one didn't speak. He moved like a machine. Jack fired. The shot bounced off his armor. The hunter struck back fast. Jack hit the ground, wind knocked from his lungs. His weapon flew from his hand. The hunter raised a blade, but then a sound cut through the night. Psst! The hunter froze, shaking violently. A second later, he dropped to the ground, smoke rising from his back. Jack turned his head. Alira stood there, holding the alien blaster he had given her. Her hands shook, but her eyes were steady. "You said I should protect," she said quietly. Jack smiled even through the pain. "Perfect timing." He sat up slowly. "Is everyone safe?" Alira nodded. "For now." But just then, a new horror came. From the darkness behind them, a second ship descended. It wasn't large, but it was fast, and before they could react, a beam of light shot from its base and pulled something into the air. Alira screamed. Her daughter was gone. Taken. Jack's heart sank. The child must have stepped out of the tunnel just for a moment. Just enough for them to grab her. Alira fell to her knees. Jack helped her up, his voice steady. "We'll get her back." Alira looked broken. "How?" "They're off the ground now, we can't fly." Jack touched the communicator on his belt. "But someone else can." He sent a message on the emergency channel. "They've taken a child. Tracking required. Marking ship signature. Pursuit authorization requested." Within seconds the reply came. Whisper 9 responding. Signal locked. Target ship identified. Support en route. Alira looked at Jack with tears in her eyes. "You promise?" Jack nodded. "We don't leave family behind." That night, the tunnel became more than just a place to hide. It became a place to plan a rescue, because now it was war. The reckoning and a new home. The night no longer felt like night. It felt like war. Not the kind Jack had known in uniform, with soldiers and orders, but a quiet, personal kind. The kind where a child had been taken, a mother had been broken, and a promise had been made. Jack didn't sleep. Neither did Alira. She sat still beside the radio, eyes empty but burning with something deeper than rage, pain with a purpose. Jack moved around the tunnel, checking supplies, fixing old gear, counting seconds like they were weapons. At dawn, the radio crackled. Whisper 9, target ship grounded in Outzone 17, emergency landing detected, 4 life signals on board. 1 matches alien child. Jack stood up. Location? 4 hours north. Abandoned mining fields. Dangerous. Remote. Jack didn't hesitate. "We're going." Alira rose with him. Her voice was calm. "I'm not staying behind." He handed her a pack and a new weapon. "Good, because I'll need you." They left the tunnel quietly. The younger child remained, hidden, guarded by an allied drone sent from Whisper 9, silent, fast, and loyal. Jack and Alira moved through woods and back roads. The path was rough, but the goal was clear. When they reached the mining fields, the land looked dead, dark rocks, broken machines, and a grounded alien ship hissing in the dust. Alira saw it first, her daughter, inside a glass cell, barely awake. Jack narrowed his eyes. 3 hunters guarded the ship. 1 was the same red-eyed leader. The others were new and even more armed. "We split," Jack said. "You go for your daughter. I'll draw them out." Alira nodded without fear. Jack ran first, firing toward the front. The hunters turned and chased him behind a broken digger. Just as he hoped, they left the ship. Alira moved fast. She reached the cell. It was sealed, but she remembered the code from her prison days. Her fingers trembled as she entered it. The door opened with a hiss. Her daughter fell into her arms. Behind her, she heard footsteps. Not Jack's. One of the hunters had returned. She turned, shielding her daughter. But before the hunter could fire, bang! A shot rang out. Jack, wounded and bleeding, had come back. The hunter fell. Silence followed. Jack dropped to his knees. "Is she safe?" Alira nodded. Thanks to you. They didn't wait. They escaped fast, leaving the dead behind. 2 hours. Later, a small ship from Whisper 9 arrived and picked them up. Jack, Elira, and her children were taken to a safe zone hidden deep in the mountains, outside the reach of hunters, away from those who trade life for money. There they finally breathed. For the first time, Elira slept without fear. Her children played in the grass, their laughter soft but real. And Jack? He didn't return to the farm. He stayed. Not because they needed protection now, but because something had changed inside him. He wasn't just a man with a quiet farm anymore. He was part of a new family. They had built something stronger than walls and tunnels. They had built trust. They had built love. And together they were finally home.